Welcome to Control Alt Delete, everybody. I am so happy you're here today. And the reason I'm happy you're here today has to do with a really profound question that I learned from our guest today. And the question is, what does it feel like to be included? The reason I got this question was I went to a panel interview and I listened in about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And I had my own epiphanies along the way. Not only that, I had some moments of shame. I had some moments of curiosity and I had some ahas. And all of it happened when I asked myself the question through this dialogue is, what does it feel like to be included? And then the opposite of that is, what does it feel like when you're excluded? You know, and when you think about the world that we're in today, I'm not here today to talk about the business case for diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I'm here to talk about what it really means at the soul level and how each leader can take their own journey, just like I've been on myself. So by no means do I have all the answers. So I've invited my favorite expert on the topic here today. Mo, I'm so glad you're here.
I am so thrilled to be here. So thrilled to have this conversation.
Yeah. So I'm going to model what I know to be true. And that is when you start a meeting and asking somebody these two questions, you're already on a better track to inclusion than you were otherwise. So let's start, Mo, with what is your preferred name and what are you paid to do?
Yeah, so the preferred name thing actually has a story behind it, which is pretty fun. So my parents, when anybody would call me Mo growing up, they'd say, we named her Maureen. Her name is Maureen. And so it was not until college that I really felt like I could have ownership over Mo. So when you look at people that I can almost always tell, people that know me from high school or previous, all call me Maureen, with a couple of exceptions. And people college and after, it's a smattering because I actually love both Mo and Maureen. Maureen's a little more formal. It's kind of an old lady name. And it's deeply, deeply my Irish heritage. And so, right, I love that part of it. Mo is really playful. It's more accessible. And so I don't have a preference, but I love now that I feel like I was given, like I got agency over my own name when I left for college. So in terms of,
I only know you as Mo, even though I always see Maureen up there.
Yeah.
So anybody what I'm hearing you say is, as a leader listening, I could call you Mo or Maureen and both work for you.
Yeah. And I almost, particularly doing this work, because like people can get super freaked out about DEI and feel like that's where I really lean into Mo, because it feels a little bit more like relaxed and like we're sitting on the couch and having a conversation. And when people come into DEI and they're afraid or they feel like somebody's going to blame them or shame them, or Mo is more inviting. And so oftentimes I think on the professional side, you'll see, although it feels a little bit counterintuitive, I lean into Mo way more in those big corporate conversations.
That's so beautiful.
And what am I paid to do? Unleash human potential. I've actually spent my career doing that. It was back, I was probably, I don't know, 30. And I had this, really what am I doing? How am I spending my hours? And I realized that every single person and every single organization has a spark, and I'm here to add oxygen, right? And to have those flames. And what that looks like now is really having people understand both what inclusion is and their role in that. And that really allows us to, we say, and I think about this as ripple effects that have a positive tsunami. Because when we have a more inclusive world, if you think about this, Lisa, like decisions long ago were made with the church, more recently with governments, right? So we've always had, right, the power came from, and I'm doing air quotes for church because globally that looks different, but that's where, right, they wielded the most power. Then governments. Now it's really business. If you look at how systemic change is happening, how we can solve big global issues like access to clean water, physical safety for everybody. Business is the one that's creating that change. And until we have inclusive environments where every single person can thrive, it's going to be much more difficult to solve those big global challenges. So I'm here to unleash human potential, right? Fan the flames of those sparks, and really create that positive tsunami ripple effect.
So don't we all want that answer? I'm here to unleash potential. Hello. And probably like, whoa, how come I didn't think of that one? Right. I'm here to like make the numbers or, get the chip out, tape out. It's like, I'm here to unleash human. Like, what? I've been playing with my own tagline, and what's been showing up for me. And I think why I love this podcast so much is I feel like I'm a connector and I unleash the magic in others. That's going to happen today while people listen in and they bring this into their team meetings and they have this dialogue. It's not about anything other than unleashing the magic and increasing the awareness, just like I've had my own journey, right? That's why I invited you here. Because for me, when I think about unleashing human potential, I'm better because I went to that event where I got to hear you talk and I got to question it for myself. So full transparency for anyone listening. Full transparency because you're listening. That cracks me up. Full transparency. I was always of the opinion and very proud. I stood really proud in how much I help women, especially women in tech, get a seat at the table, grow their career, see themselves in STEM, return to work after taking a break. And I didn't see anything beyond gender. And in your talk, when you were answering a question, it dawned on me that my lens was that as a white woman in tech. And I think you may remember me going, I'm so embarrassed. I don't want to ask this, but if I don't, I'm going to miss out on the learning. But I was like welling up and struggling from shame and curiosity all at once to like, holy crap, I am not a woman of color in tech. And yet I've been like so proud of all the work I've done and feeling like I'm making a difference. And I am. And yet at that moment, it sparked something in me to really question and be way more curious than I had been, because I was kind of at the point in my career of going, yeah, I kind of know what that looks like. I've been there. I know that. And so I think for me, one of the biggest questions I have for you is when you have a leader who thinks they are inclusive and thinks they get it, like I am that person and I'm always learning. What's the right question to ask yourself to like shame? Because like once that light bulb hits, I think there's this fork in the road and you have to go, wait a minute, don't go feel crappy about yourself. Don't discount all what you have done, but look at it's like, look at the possibility now. And I'm curious
100%
navigate that.
Yeah. So anyone that thinks they're woke, that's hilarious. Right. I think this is like, I wake up every day and I eat and I sleep and I breathe this and I learn something new every day. And I stumble across another mistake I've made today. Right. This work it's about embracing that mess, but not stopping, because so when people feel excluded, the same neural pathways fire as when we feel physical pain. Think about that. If you are making somebody, does not matter what your intentions are. We say that people are NBC, nice but clueless, right? So they're right there.
That was me. Clueless.
Right? Yeah, right. People don't wake up and say, I really want other people. I really want to make people feel excluded, right? They're nice but clueless. And I loved how you asked the question about questions, because that actually is the place that can move us from nice but clueless to nice but informed, right? And nice and inclusive. And that is, we say that curiosity is an inclusion superpower. Not curiosity about, I want to ask somebody and put the burden on somebody different than me to get me up to speed and inform me. Instead, it is, what can I learn about this person? What can I learn about the situation? What can I learn about my own thinking that allows me to approach a situation and says, here's what I've learned. Is that inclusive for you? Right. I did this research, or I found out these things, or I watched this interview, or I dug in, I did my work. Now let's talk about, as a team, right? As in our one-on-one interactions, what is inclusive for you? And I think those, I always say the questions to ask is, what's the bias?
Okay.
Right. It's not, is there bias? Is my thinking biased? Quite literally, our brain, and I won't go too much into the neuroscience because you can go look it up, but our brain is wired to be biased. And let's say I were a Black man, I am still biased, right? Let's say as a woman, I am still biased, right? Because we are part of an underrepresented group does not mean that our brain is no longer biased, right? So it is really thinking about, what's the bias here? The question that I'd love to ask myself is, what else could be true here?
Yeah.
Here's what I think about this situation or this person. What else could be true? How can I be more inclusive right now is another one of my favorites, like in this moment. And I say one of the ways to do that is to actually do a privilege scan. It's one of my favorite go-to. We all have privilege, right? Some systemic privilege and some situational privilege, right? So if I walk into a room or into a meeting or into any situation, it's, what's my privilege here? Maybe my privilege is that I don't speak with an accent. And I'm not going, maybe my privilege is I don't have caregiving responsibilities. So I can really, right, think about when we're going to schedule critical meetings or critical conversations, or I do not have any sort of physical disability that is going to impact my ability to access information, the meeting itself, right? So going through that privilege scan and really thinking about, we tend to think about privilege as just a race issue, right? I can talk about my husband without having to worry that somebody's going to feel some sort of way about that, right? Because I'm a white, cisgender, able-bodied, straight woman, right? All of those things. So how can I spend my privilege? Our privilege isn't going away. So it's, well, it's not pie. It's not. So doing that privilege span, right? What's my privilege right now? And how can I spend that privilege? So I just gave you a whole bunch, but I would say lean into your appropriate curiosity and the power of questions, because absolutely an inclusion superpower.
Yeah. The thing that really stood out for me, because I wrote these all down because I'm going to make sure we capture them all. You said something about not having somebody teach you, like don't on the person. And I love that so much, because even as a woman in tech, a white woman in tech, which I'll label now, being in a think tank with a bunch of white dudes asking me why there aren't more women in STEM, and then me answering the question, them discounting it, and then me trying to educate them.
It's exhausting.
It's freaking exhausting. And it's infuriating. And it makes you want to give up. And like, if you can't see it, right, there's so much to it. So that's my own little mini experience to where I remember that feeling and I try and think about what you're saying. So I think for any leader listening, board member, shareholder, frontline people leader, doing that scan of what are you bringing forward and how can that be of service? and then also being curious. And I think you said something like, what's the best inclusion activity right now? It could be starting your meeting with what's your preferred name and what are you paid to do, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I know that people are also asking questions around pronouns. And I want to talk about that just for a second, Lisa, because I think it's really important. First, make sure that you're not asking people what their preferred pronouns are, because your pronouns are your pronouns.
Got it.
Right? So I think preferred name is perfect.
Awesome. Yep.
Right? Because that is a preference.
Yeah.
My gender identity isn't a preference.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's asking somebody, what are your pronouns? I also don't like that as a start of a meeting, because somebody might still be really trying to understand, or they might not yet be out with their gender identity. Mm-hmm. And so while it's important, we actually have a section in the app that's about how to find somebody's pronouns out. It's really sharing yours first. And if people are then comfortable, letting them. If they're not, that's okay too. And if there are ways in advance or after to say, we want to make sure that we are seeing the authentic you. If you would like to share your pronouns, we'll be happy to add that in future, meetings, right? As we're noting people, but really giving people agency and choice about sharing those. And those of us with the privilege of particular being cisgender, or even just really people that are really grounded and have gone through the work of understanding their own gender identity, those people leading with their pronouns first. And the reason I'm spending time on this, Lisa, is we know from some of the data that we collect that this idea around pronouns and gender is top of people's mind right now.
I hear you, I see you, I feel you, and I'm so glad you put that lens that you double clicked on that, and you said that about specifically for pronouns, not for preferred name, because name you get to choose. You could call me Sally, right? Versus I've had my own experience, and it's not my story to tell, but there is someone I love very deeply as a family member who has transitioned from male to female. And I went with them to change their gender on their driver's license. And I became really clear of my privilege, really clear of how easy it was and what it took to fight for that, the courage, there was so much that went into it. And I was so worried about the judge and how they were going to handle it, because I just love this person so much. And when the judge was like, you know who you are, what are we putting on here? I was like, I could cry right now.
Yep.
You know what? 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been in that room. I would have been like, why do we got it? Well, who cares what you're called? Blah, 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 right? But I've evolved too.
I think, and that's about staying on the journey.
Yeah. And you made mention of an app, and there's so many questions I want to get to, I'm going to plant a seed, a teaser. I want to make sure people know that there's actually a tool here that we can leverage that you have created. So before I go to the app, because I know I'll get lost in that, because I think it's so amazing, I do have a question for you when it comes to burnout. And one of the things that I'm really, really, really curious about, I know what I burn. I know my own burnout story as, a cis. Am I even going to say this right? Cis. How do I say this? I'm in a heterosexual relationship.
Yep. So you're straight. So you're heterosexual. You're cisgender. By the way, for folks that are listening, that might, cisgender means that the sex. So think of it this way. Think about a person. Gender and gender identity are head.
Okay.
Right? Sexual orientation, who I love and who I'm attracted to, that's heart. And sex, biological sex, right, is right down here, right? So those are three different things: head, heart, and sex. So being cisgender means the sex you were born with and your gender identity are the same.
This is so helpful.
Right. And so people that are non-binary or transgender or gender queer, right? There are a lot of different ways. And again, this is where get yourself educated and then ask people, right, what language is inclusive for them. Their gender identity and the sex that they were born are not in alignment.
Got it. Okay.
So when you say, yeah, you can either say straight or heterosexual, and I'm cisgender, right? Those are two different dimensions of diversity.
Yeah. And so I think what I'm actually showing right now in this conversation is I even have someone who's transitioned in my life and I still don't have all the words right.
Yeah. Oh, and
but I think it's so to be like, hey, guess what? You're not going to know it all.
No, you're not going to know it all, and you're going to screw it up.
Yeah.
Two guarantees.
Yes.
And I think that's the piece. People are so afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing that they do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go back to that same neural pathways of physical pain when you're making somebody feel excluded. So when I say the stakes are high, it's a privilege to not do something. It's a privilege to stay where we are because we're so afraid. And so it's really saying it is going to be messy. It is going to be hard. And I'm going to keep learning. And when I make a mistake, I'm going to learn from that and do better next time. So we say it's not a matter of if mistakes are going to happen. It's what you do right after the mistake. Right. And do you say, will you be vulnerable? Will you own that? And then when you move on and not center it on you, going back to gender, for example, let's say I misgender somebody and they are they, them, right? Versus he, him. And I call them him. In that moment, if I make it about me, if I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it, I misgendered you, blah, blah, blah. That's about how I feel versus about how that person feels. Instead, it's they, sorry about that, move on. Done, right? Use the right pronoun, move on.
Yeah, I know I had a question. I'm going to bring it back, but I have to say this right now. So I just watched the first episode of the new Sex and the City, and just like that. And the character Miranda, who's a lawyer, is going back to school because she wants to be a human rights advocate. And she walks into the room and she does everything we're talking about wrong. It is, have you seen this episode yet? The scene? Oh, I'm going to tell you. It's like, I was just, everything. Gender. I don't even have all the labels that I could throw at you. But the way that it was written for me was that I sat there watching it going, I felt all those feelings too. I've done all of that. From the simplest things to the woman who's the professor, she says to the professor, that's where the professor sits. And the woman turns around, she goes, I am the professor. And she says, oh, I didn't recognize you with braids, because it was a Black woman who on the website.
Right. So they really they went after it. Yeah.
Thing. And so for anybody who just wants to, I don't know, get comfortable being uncomfortable, that scene is, I think I felt all of those at some time.
Well, and that is the important part, because it's again, I can either be afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, or I can be putting this person right in this place where they're constantly feeling othered.
Yes.
And what I have to give up is the privilege of comfort. And giving up that privilege of comfort, again, means that then I'm leaning into the messy, I'm leaning into the hard, and I'm doing it all with curiosity. I think about this, think about little kids, right? And they're as they're working this all out, they're all super curious. Now our skills need to be better than a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
But that curiosity is what we need to bottle up from them, and just keep asking the questions, keep learning, keep leaning into the messy and into the hard.
Yeah.
And it really is, this isn't something grandiose in terms of I'm going to make this big gesture or I'm going to do this one thing. Being inclusive is every day, all day. It is,
The inclusion. Mhm,
Yeah, it's a set of choices.
mhm.
So it is not, we often say this is akin to leading a healthy lifestyle. A healthy lifestyle isn't, I'm going to eat 8 apples on Sunday and do 500 sit-ups. It is literally all week. How am I managing my stress? How much sleep am I getting? What am I doing for my well-being? What am I eating? How am I, how am I, it's choices, lots of little choices all day long. Inclusion absolutely is the same way. A lot of little choices all day long, every day, how I show up in the world.
Well, this is exactly where I wanted to go with you. So we'll forget my story for a minute about burnout, because I think we've made our point. And the thing I wanted to double click on with you, why I had you today specifically, is when we think about burnout for someone who is feeling the lack of inclusion, the lack
Mhm.
when I look at women leaving the workforce, right? When we look at the hybrid workforce and what that does for people with able-bodied versus people with disabilities.
Yes.
I even think about my own family members who get overwhelmed with noise and how remote work for them is such a beautiful thing. I would just love for you to share your insights, thoughts. I don't have a specific question, but I
Yeah.
think raising awareness about the impacts of lack of inclusion and the correlation to burnout.
I mean, it is like X marks the spot. Those, if you think about, again, I would have people go back to a time when you felt excluded, and how exhausting that is, right? Again, now we know neural pathways of pain, or when you're the only, and you're being asked to speak for your entire underrepresented group. When you are, we say it feels like death by a million paper cuts often, right? So it's not that necessarily that one egregious thing that happens to you. It's the again and again, those constant microaggressions that are so draining. Right? Whether it's the questions or not being included or being talked over or somebody else getting credit for your work or being asked to get the coffee or being misgendered or. So when you think about just how that is soul sucking, right? Over time, I knew, I'll tell, I knew when I had my daughter and I came back that I no longer, I was still very engaged in the work that I did. I no longer felt like I belonged, and I quit, right? Because that was going to be too much, right? It was too much. I just did a recent panel with 3 Black women. And if you look, the people that, the 2 groups that don't want to come back to work the most are people in the disabled community and Black women. And they were saying it's so liberating that I don't have to cover, right? And covering is, where you're showing up and you're having to just absolutely erase parts of yourself, right? And show up and code switch, right? And speak and act and dress in a way that fits the dominant group culture. And right, that exhaustion. So I think about as a woman, right? How many times I'm like, right, being told that I was too bossy, that I was too opinionated, that I should be patient, right? Chip, 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 chip away. And you're spending all of that energy, right? Either covering or code switching or dealing with those microaggressions and trying not to let them get to you, that at some point it can feel like, snap, I don't have any more. I'm done. I'm out. You have effectively sucked my soul.
You get stuck, and then what happens in burnout is the cynicism kicks in, because you see a way out and everything sucks and everybody's awful. And, there's this like combination of the soul suck happening, the cynicism coming on top of it, and then just feeling like it must be me.
It must be me.
It's
It
like,
must be.
I felt that. I'm raising my hand, right? And it was like, once I realized, oh, where do I have control? What do I have choice in? Even how I held my meetings, if I did them walking instead of sitting, like all of these things that I lost sight of because my soul was sucked.
Yep.
It was a real, well, this is why we call it Control Alt Delete. It's about rebooting leadership drive, rebooting mindset, rebooting systems. And even the code switching isn't lost on me and what that takes, because people listening are in tech, they know what it's like to write code. They know what it's like to have bugs and features, air quotes, right? And they know what it's like to optimize for performance and time to results. And think about that person who's constantly navigating that and all the energy drain that's happening that could be focused on amazing.
Brilliant work. Brilliant work.
Exactly. Yeah. Even I did a great interview. We're focusing on introverts.
Uh-huh.
I believe introverts are excluded a lot.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about inclusion, let the introverts have time to process, come prepared, and then call on them without it being a surprise and watch the magic.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think for anyone listening, it can feel really overwhelming. Like, how am I going to think about all these 73 things that every day more is coming? And what I want to do is make it simple for people. And I believe it starts with inclusion. And I believe the questions we started in the beginning were, how can I be more inclusive today? Let's do a privilege scan. What matters most right now? And remembering what it feels like to be included.
Yes.
What does that look like for you? And I think one of the things that's tangible and practical has to do with your app. And so Mo and team have built this amazing app that I've actually got to see and demo. And just the words she's using right now, you'll actually get in the app, where there's videos of people identifying in certain ways. And the questions are like, what does inclusion feel like for you? How might we be more inclusive for you? So it becomes way more personal, not so much about this, let's lump everybody in a bucket. Because I think leaders get stuck in, well, I have to hire a percentage of this, and my leadership team must be a percentage of that. And then because they feel like it's enforced on them that they have to meet these numbers, they put people in these jobs, but they're not inclusive.
Oh my gosh. It's actually, that is one of the greatest failures of leadership that I see right now. It is horrible, Lisa, that we've seen in the last, and I you could go back and watch a video of me from about a year and a half ago. And I said, we are going to see a spike in turnover in underrepresented groups in about a year. And sure enough, it's been happening. Everyone scrambled to hire for diversity and then put these people in toxic work environments for them. And that is a failure of leadership. Yep. If you are not going to, we say it's a both, you need to really be thinking about diversity and equity happen at the leadership level and at the systems level. Who are we hiring? How are we compensating them? What do our promotion practices look like? All of that, systems, leaders, inclusion and belonging, everybody all day long. So you have to equip everybody, right? When I said it's like a healthy lifestyle, right? Everybody every day. That's what makes up your cultures. And those really happen at the team level. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not equipping people at the individual and at the team level because we don't teach this stuff. Yeah. Right. We don't teach what's a gender neutral pronoun. We don't teach how to make, how, if I have a coworker who's autistic, right, how to make it inclusive for them, generations, all of those things. So we leave people nice, but clueless. And the impact of that are toxic work environments for most people, right? That then lead to this burnout.
Well, this is one of the things I've been saying, and I feel like this is the intersection of it. So I've been saying leaders without these skills are your biggest liability.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Look,
this is a liability. This is a leadership liability.
100%.
People experts promote them because they're great at writing code. And then all of a sudden they're supposed to lead people. And then they get like, oh, I didn't know I had to like care about your pronouns, or what do you mean that you need a flexible work environment because there's no childcare in the middle of a pandemic? We got shit to do, right?
Absolutely.
I'm getting it done. You better get it done. And then they're on and on and on. And that, I believe, is a massive liability to the company, to the people, to the communities, to the planet. Like this is why I wanted to talk to you today.
Well, and if it is a huge liability when you think about upskilling and reskilling, and when you think about what are the leadership behaviors that were needed in the past, have morphed.
Yes, they have.
Right. And so this conscious inclusion, deep listening, curiosity, right? All of those things, because again, what you're trying to do is unleash the potential of your team. Right. And I'm glad we didn't talk about the business case, because good God,
Yeah.
that's been proved 1,000 times over.
Yeah.
But what do I do? And again, there is no silver bullet. It's lots of little things. How are you running your meetings? Who are you inviting? Who gets to speak? Right? All of these little ongoing things that really make up those micro cultures, and those micro cultures at the team level. So equipping individuals, and particularly team leaders, with the resources, with the language, with the ongoing little bits of information. That's how you change your cultures.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm so with you, and I'm so grateful that we're having this conversation today. There's two things I want to make sure we talk about with the time that we have, and I know anybody who's listening is going to want more, so we'll figure out what more looks like. But for right now, I know when I facilitate anything, whether it's a one-on-one coaching, CEO suite offsite, everything in between, there's a couple of things I always make sure, and that's every voice gets heard, seen, and that there's some sort of gratitude or appreciation for what's shared. And so I just want to offer that to the listener, that you don't have to go get a PhD in this.
No, gosh, no.
Basic level, making sure that everybody on the team gets their voice into the conversation. You can make that happen as the leader, making sure that there's appreciation shared for what was shared, even if you're pissed off and they found something you don't want to talk about. I really appreciate you bringing that up. We're going to do something, like lending a voice of appreciation will enable people to make it more safe for people to speak their truth.
Yes.
Whatever that is, right? And I know your app is something that they could really lean into. So I just love for you to talk about why you created this app and what success you've been seeing with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, what's interesting, Lisa, is I call myself an accidental tech CEO.
I love this so much.
Because I really, we have always, Moxie was actually founded to diversify the leadership table. We started as a peer mentoring for women. And then, then created micro learning courses. And then women in the courses were saying, in the program, were saying, this is great. I am raising my hand. I'm taking up more space. I'm taking credit for my work. I'm leaning in until I fall over, systems broken. And that's really where we said, okay, let's help leaders understand unconscious bias. Then we went to unconscious bias micro learning. That was probably 5-6 years ago. And I was speaking at a conference, and I walked out, and every single person was already looking at their phone. Right. And it was one of those light bulb moments of, this is frictionless delivery. Right. This is a tool that people don't have to go log into. They don't have to go find something. They literally already have. And if you think about habit loops, right, and breaking into habit loops, this is a habit that they already have, checking their phone. So now let's break into that habit loop and just deliver an inclusion nudge, right? That it's, I think,
nudge. I love that it's a nudge.
It's a nudge. Everything is, I think the longest piece of content is about 3.5 minutes. And that's one of those interviews that you referenced. Some of them are 30 seconds, but I could also go and I can search and I can know this information is accurate. So, okay, I am about to meet somebody who is an amputee. What are some things that I need to learn about limb difference, right? And what can make this person feel included? I just found out, or just tuned into the fact that most of my team are introverts. I can go and I can find out how to include that person. I can find out how to make, so like literally across the board. I have a coworker who's Hindu. I'm in charge of ordering lunch, right? All of these things, it can either be a micro affirmation or a microaggression. Well, let's turn them into micro affirmation.
Right. Yeah. So good. So the nudge happens, and you can also be curious and go deeper if you want to.
Oh, we actually, yeah. And we've actually created it for a real rhythm of inclusion. Mm-hmm. So for those people leaders, there's a 52-week playbook, 5 minutes a week, let's talk about, okay, let's search the app together. What's something, what are people curious about? Let's find out about that together, right? Again, just making it, right, and curated content guides, because you really, again, it needs to be woven in your culture.
Yeah, and there's a robust reporting. And this, look, we're not doing a demo right now, but suffice it to say, you want the reports, they're there, right? You want,
oh my gosh,
the process that's there. I believe, just as this podcast makes its way into team meetings and one-on-ones, because sometimes listener will bring it to their boss and say, can you listen to this? Then let's discuss it. Right? I see already the beautiful opportunity that your app creates for either leader-led conversation or employee-led conversation with a leader who wants to know more and be like, I don't really want to talk about it, but will you watch this video and then we can discuss it?
That is, and that is what we're hearing. We're hearing, right, that we designed it as a bridge.
Yeah,
right, as a tool to have that conversation.
Yeah. So we'll make sure that people know how to find that in the show notes, of course. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is here's the thing I know. This is my soapbox for 2 minutes. It's a really wild and crazy ride right now. We have so much going on in our world. Leaders are already maxed out. Their teams are maxed out. And I want to make sure that this conversation doesn't feel one that's burdensome and heavy, like, oh, I have all this to do, because really what we've given you today are new ways to think, questions to ask yourself, technology to support you, personal stories of our own, examples going well and not so well. And so my hope today is that the listener, that's you, by the way, listening in, that there's one thing that you take away that makes it a little bit easier for you to lead as an inclusive leader. And Mo, I love double dog dares. I don't even know where I learned this phrase, but like, I dare use nothing. Like the double dog dare, I think it's from the Christmas Story.
I think it is too.
You're all in, right? So do you have a double dog dare for the leader who is like, okay, I know I need to do this, but crap, it feels big. What's the double dog dare?
To stop centering yourself in that. And and to center your team. Because if you're, again, oh, I'm so busy, that's the privilege to not act, versus I double dog dare you to do one thing, to ask yourself one question every day that helps you be more inclusive, right? To scan one situation a day and to say, what's one thing I can do? But the real double dog dare is to stop centering yourself and start centering other people when it comes to inclusion.
Oh
this isn't a program. There is no silver bullet. This is quite literally a way of leading.
The way of leading. Okay. So Jazz, all my clients are going to benefit from this too, by the way. This conversation alone is going to have a ripple effect through the podcast, through the clients that we support and work with. And as you know, I'm just a huge fan of the work that you do. I've had personal experience in my own growth, and I'm so glad that you said yes to be here. Like
so thank you. Like, such an honor. I really, really appreciate you inviting me to be in this conversation.
Oh, yeah, well, listen, anytime you are invited, for sure. I'd love to add your song, drum roll please, to our playlist, because what I know is that music, from a neuroscience standpoint and aligning your head and your heart, music is a gateway, and it's an opportunity for you to get into your body and into your soul. And I know everybody has that song when they're just feeling like it's too heavy or there's too much, and you want to, raise your vibe or raise your awareness to what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
What's your go-to song in that situation?
Yeah, this is like asking me to pick a favorite child, because I really do use, like, music is my absolute go-to, and so I'm giving you two, not one.
Absolutely.
The first one is if I need to just feel grounded in the bigger energy of it all, and that is "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles.
Yep.
Right, because that's and that one, I mean, my kids, like, everyone just knows. And then if I just need to, like, get that immediate pump up, let's go, it's "Say Hey" by Michael Franti.
Hey, hey, hey. Is that the one? What is today? Yeah, I got it in my head, but I'm not translating it through my vocal, but I got you.
It's amazing. And if you watch the video, the dance, the joy, the pure energy of it all. And I actually got to, if anybody follows some of the best venues in the world, one that comes up for both, concert goers, but also for musicians, is Red Rocks Amphitheater here in Colorado. So it's this natural, like red rocks, and the seats are built in and the stage is down low. And I got to see Michael Franti on my birthday. And if you've ever seen him, the guy he's something like 6'7", and he runs through, and, I could have reached out, if I were that fan, because he was standing right in front of me singing this. And I realized I was literally jumping up and down, like it was almost this out of body experience. So it was very, very magical.
I will hold this story with me whenever I hear this song now too, which is beautiful. And something I've learned is that when you can connect with a song with a positive feeling, an experience, how much more powerful it is. So thank you for letting us into that on your birthday.
Yeah, it was super fun.
Almost, I'm sure, like some sort of musical church experience, right? Because you get
100%. Yeah.
I had that very similar kind of vibe for myself with India Ari on my birthday.
Yep.
Just like when you get to see a musical experience on your birthday where you're already thinking about what's behind and what's next, and you can I just love this so much. Yeah. So okay, Michael Franti and the Beatles going in there, already laid down. Tell us.
I would just say Earth, Wind and Fire is always up there. Nina Simone is always that's why I said, it's like, how do I pick?
Podcast playlist, by the way, my friend. I think you're like, what? Yeah, that's so cool. I'd love to leave with how people can find you. I mean, obviously I'm connect all of our clients to you anytime, but I think the world needs to know about you. So what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, I would say we are in conversation a lot on LinkedIn, both through the Moxie Exchange page, but really I'm out there all the time, and I'd love amplifying what's happening. We have an ongoing series. If people want to connect with me, I connect with everybody there. And we're really active in that community. So that is the best spot.
Awesome. And so the Moxie Exchange. Then.
Yep.
And if they want to find you personally, are they looking for Mo or are they looking for Maureen?
It says Maureen.
Maureen.
And
okay.
Then I think it's actually Maureen, Mo, Berkner Boyt. Toss in any of those. I'm the only one out there, so it's pretty easy to find.
Go to me and you'll find her through my connections. I'm just saying. We will connect you. Mo, deep gratitude for the presence that you create, the safety that you always model, and the kindness and curiosity that you bring to every conversation. I'm better because I know you, and I'm continuing to learn, and I'm just grateful for our time today. Thank you so much.
Oh, all of that boomerang right back to you. I just appreciate, and you holding space and having these ongoing conversations, so critical, Lisa. So thank you.
All right. So for those of you listening in, this is brought to you by RLD Group. We are in the business of rebooting Leadership Drive. It is no joke. This is big business we're doing, people. This is important. This is for the world to change. And it starts with inclusion. And there's nobody better to learn that from than Mo. Make it a great day, everyone. Thank you.